What is going on YouTube? So I've went ahead and started removing the fuel tank on my 1993 Jeep Wrangler YJ that I have named the Rattletrap YJ. In a previous video I showed you guys all of this rust that needs to be dealt with immediately. So like I said, I've already got the tank. I don't have it off, but it's loosened up. It's just a bunch of 13mm nuts, and the front three, facing the front of the Jeep, I had to use a 13mm wrench to hold the nuts while I used this ratchet to back them out because the whole thing was spinning together. I have both of the vent and filler hoses loosened up. I have a motorcycle jack here supporting the tank, and I'm thinking the only thing right now holding the tank up, well, nothing's holding it up, but there is still a fuel pump connector that I need to disconnect as I drop this. And matter of fact, looks like the tank is still suspended by something. So like I said, it's a work in progress. That is the first step, is dropping the tank, and then I'm gonna have to take a grinder wheel or maybe the plasma cutter and cut off this rear bumper because I welded it onto the frame. Never thought the frame would get this bad to the point I would have to cut everything out of it, but that's what happens when you take a Jeep through a river. Don't do it, guys. Not if it's one you care about. So anyways, I'm gonna drop that tank, and then I'm just gonna update you guys throughout the process because I want you guys to see, you know, that I am trying to restore this YJ as much as possible, because this is the oldest vehicle on my channel. My very first video ever made was this Jeep, so I want to keep this thing in one piece. So it started the channel, and it needs to stay on the channel. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna get her fixed up and get it as right as possible. Okay, this thing kind of fits snug. It was barely rubbing up against the exhaust, so I kind of forced it down, and you can see now I have a vacuum line where a vent line kind of stuck with the strap. The strap is part of the metal skid plate. Your tank is actually plastic, skid plate's metal. Mine's starting to rust, so I may just go ahead and buy a new one. But the skid plate's got these straps, and the straps actually go up into the tub of the Jeep. You can see that one's kind of in the way. So I've done this on a TJ. I've never done it on a YJ, but it seems like it might be just a little bit different. I mean, the principle's the same. The 13mm nuts were the same anyway, but I felt like once I done that on the TJ, the tank just dropped. So right now I'm going to figure out what's going on with these straps. I don't know if I should knock the strap out of the tub. It seems like it's kind of stuck up in there. Oh, there it is. Okay, yeah, so yeah, it's just like a TJ basically, or I should say a TJ is like a YJ. So I'm gonna go ahead. Oh, that strap's already loose, and I've ripped what looks to be my, no, it's just a bunch of, look at all this garbage, guys. Man, I can't wait to clean all this up. But I also had this trailer wiring harness right here that was kind of in the way, so I didn't install that. I guess the previous owner ran this wiring on top of the tank, but right now I'm just gonna go ahead and remove these this vent hose. We have electrical connector, looks like two fuel lines. Is this a factory return style setup? I didn't know that about YJs. But yeah, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and knock all that out. Okay, so both of these fuel lines, one of them had a 8mm hose clamp on it, and the other was a 1/4 inch. I was able to get those disconnected. These vent lines, there's another one up top I need to disconnect, but it looks like the main connector is tucked up there too. So I'm gonna go up there, disconnect it, and the last vacuum, or not vacuum line, but vent line up there, and then this tank should be free to go. Just have to kind of shift it out of place because I think it's still getting hung up on the filler and vent hoses, which is no big deal because they're getting replaced anyway. both of these, I think this is a return style fuel setup, but looks like both of those fuel lines are dry rotted, pretty nasty, so I might replace those too. You know, since you guys are, if you guys are doing the same thing I am, once you're down here, you might as well just go ahead and replace it. Do it right. Don't want to come back down here and do it again. There is residual fuel in both of those fuel lines, so just expect to get a little bit on you. Nothing too crazy. Okay, tank is out. It wasn't too bad. Just a bunch of 13mm nuts. You have your two main fuel and vent hoses right here on the side. Two vent hoses you have to disconnect. Main electrical fuel pump connector. And then of course your return and sending lines right here. So I want to take this thing up, clean it up real good, clean up the skid plate. Highly recommend that you guys do that as well. But yeah, dropping the tank's not too bad. It's gotta kind of force it around. I use a pry bar to kind of shift it from left to right so it can clear the exhaust and then it can clear the leaf springs. May not be as fun getting it back up inside the Jeep, but oh well. Not worried about that right now. Okay, tank's dropped. Jeep is jacked up, supported. Have the wheels and tires off, so now we have complete access to this frame. I'm gonna go ahead and drop the shackle, get it out of the way so we have full access to the rust. Okay, I'm gonna show you guys what I done here. I had the rear end jacked up, which I had to take those jacks out, put them up against the actual frame because I wanted to drop the rear end to take all the tension off the leaf springs so I could take out the top. Well, I took the entire shackle off on this side, but on this one you just have to take the top one out completely, loosen up the other two, and you can just flip it down like that. It gives you full access to the frame. These shackle bushings are toast, so I'm guessing now I'm gonna have to, I took everything off, the rear bumper, spare tire, my jerry can, just to take some weight off of it, so when that does come off it won't be as bad. But you can see on this side right here, this frame, well, the passenger side of the frame isn't as bad. I mean, it's still got really bad rust, but the driver's side is absolutely terrible. But we have a ground wire right here. It's a little Phillips. I'm gonna take it out. Then of course you got the 2 bolts here for the rear bumper, but I'm gonna have to cut the weld off there. Yeah, can't reuse those shackle bushings. They're completely toast. But when we start cutting, we have to make sure everything's out the way. We got this tail light harness here, and it looks like this is probably gonna have to be removed too, because the safety cap extends all the way over here. So the exhaust is just gonna hang for a little bit too, chill out. Well, it's getting dark and cold, so I gave up for the night. Been using this plasma cutter. It does okay, but I think because I'm using it on 120, it's just not doing as good as it should. It seems like it cuts out quite a bit, so I've got an adapter for it. So I have an extension cable for my Lincoln welder that's like the old 220 style plug-in, and this one's like the new modern style. So waiting for that so I can run this on 220, and hopefully it'll do a better job at cutting. But I'm gonna show you guys how far I got so far. Cut through right there what's welded it right there. I regret welding this rear bumper to the frame of my Jeep. That was a mistake. Oh no, you can see I've got cut right there as well. And then what I really dread is I have it welded right here as well. You can see I tried to get the plasma cutter in there, but yeah, I should have just bolted this bumper on and just left it alone. I don't know why I welded it. But yeah, as you can see, it's going to be a pain in the butt cutting those welds out. But once I have those cut, the rear bumper come off, then I can start cutting the frame up. Okay, going on day 2. I have my safety caps laid out here. Right now I'm putting primer on the inside of these because of course we don't want these things to rust from the inside out again. I may it's got one, no, these actually have drain holes in them already, so we don't even have to worry about drilling drain holes in these, because that's ultimately what kills these the rear sections of the frame is like in my case, I went through a river and water, dirt, debris got stuck inside that back section of the frame, and you know, over time it just eats its way out. So with these, they're kind of already have the holes in them, so they will drain, and it makes them easier to clean. Like if you were to like stick a water hose and spray from the top and rinse them out, you could do that as well. But yeah, right now I'll just put some primer in the inside, and then I'm going to spray over top of that with rust reformer. I'm not going to spray the outside because I still want clean metal when I weld this on. So right now I'm gonna let this sit and dry. I'm gonna put rust reformer over top of it, and I'm gonna show you guys what I'm thinking about doing with the Jeep. You know, this plasma cutter, it's not doing too good of a job cutting, so I'm gonna see if I can't work around the rear bumper. Because honestly, I don't think it needs to come off now that I'm thinking about it, but the closer I can get to cutting this out, because this is still rust and rot, and it's up against the bumper. But the safety caps actually have a little small flange of good metal, so I can cut all of this out. And what sucks is, this is pretty bad up at the top, and the safety cap's meant to slide over the bottom if you still have a good top, and I didn't realize my rot's pretty close to the top. I might be able to save it, I don't know, but once I get all this knocked out, that's another thing we need to do. We need to clean all of this out. So when I take the plasma cutter and cut the rot out, we still need to get the inside of the good metal, brush it off really good, clean it up, and I'm gonna spray it with a primer, rust reformer as well. Passenger side I'm not too worried about because it's in way better shape than the driver's side. I have a lot more meat on the top to play with. I still need to get that ground off, but yeah, I think I'm just gonna leave the bumper on. I'm just gonna re-weld what I cut because it's just gonna be a lot of cutting. I have the side welds right there, and it's just, I don't want to deal with it honestly. But see, the plasma cutter worked great there, but it's like when you start going halfway through it, it just stops, and it's like the machine shuts down, and I don't know if it's overheating or if it's because I'm on 120 and it just can't handle it. But I don't know. But I have this adapter, so I have an extension cable for the 120. On 120 it maxes out at 45 amps, and I think on 220 it can go up to 65. So maybe it will cut better, I don't know. Okay guys, I think I came up with a solution with this rear bumper. I'm just going to leave it on because the tabs that I have cut through will be pieces of the frame that I'm cutting out, so I don't think this is going to be in the way once I cut all this rod out. These right here, where the bumper's kind of welded into the gas tank support, I'm just going to re-weld this back together, so not too worried about that. I'm going to go ahead and just weld those now, so I can go ahead and just touch all that up with the rust reformer and stuff. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to cut around the rear bumper and just leave it on. That will save us a lot more time. Okay, so I got those two small tabs welded up. You can see some paint dripping because I went ahead and I sprayed everything up underneath here with a rust reformer, because that's all at the top of the fuel tank that you can't get to. So I figured I'd go ahead and spray it now, because the you can see that little like cross member support right there starting to rust. So I went ahead and just put some rust reformer on it. I don't know, I'm trying to help this Jeep as much as I can, but usually when you start getting this much rust, it's a losing battle. Okay, so this is just a rough guess of where I think I might have to cut this old frame. Good news is, if you can consider any good news from this, is the top metal up here looks pretty good and solid. Over here may be an issue, so I'm gonna try to knock as much of that rust out as I can so it's nice clean metal when I go back and weld the new safety cap in place. But like I said, this is just a rough estimate. I won't know for sure until I get the safety caps after they dry and slide it over and get a actual marking of what needs to be cut out, because you want to leave some good metal to weld to, obviously. So this will work for now, I guess, and then I'll get a more precise measurement once those dry. But right now I'm just glad to see nice shiny metal. There's actually some decent frame underneath. Well, underneath, I mean, it's non-existent. I mean, that is terrible. But yeah, I guess I'm gonna grab the shop vac and do some more cleaning, because this rust just keeps falling and falling. That's terrible, guys. That sucks. But oh well, nothing that can't be fixed, I guess. Looks like I'm gonna have to cut the rear of the frame out completely before I can even slide this up and get a proper marking. But you can see it's just gonna slide right over in place. Yeah, I'm a little off, but I'm gonna clean this up. I'm not cutting that section out. That's just gonna be clean metal for me to weld to, but this back here, it has to be cut out regardless. Okay, so this old plasma cutter is just doing more harm than good on 120. It's just not making consistent cuts, so that just looks terrible. I'm gonna wait till my adapter comes in, put it on 240, and try cutting this section out. And then it'll be another day into the project, I guess. But these should be dried up by now. I have a primer and rust reformer and some rust enamel on these, so they should be solid. So here's the bottom of the skid plate for your fuel tank. This rubber piece right here traps in a lot of dirt and mud. So this right here is a huge mixture of just clay, mud. I guess it's built up underneath the tank over time, and of course it's caused it to rust because it traps moisture. So what I'm doing right now is just look at that big clump of sand and dirt right there. So yeah, I'm just cleaning all this up. Gonna vacuum it up and try to clean it up, prime it, and coat this in rust reformer as well. You can see there's some rust holes forming, but this is just a skid plate. It's nothing too crucial, so I don't care if it has little holes here and there. So I finally got my 220 adapter for the plasma cutter, and it still doesn't cut right. You can see that I've done a terrible job cutting out this rot on the frame, but luckily the safety cap is going to slide over it and hide all that. So I'm just going to take a wire brush, clean all that up as best as I can. I wish this thing worked better. It seems like, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a bad ground or what, but like it won't keep an arc, so it'll cut for like 5 seconds and then stop, and that's why the frame, the cut on it's so jagged. It's because it would just cut out instead of making like a straight cut, you know. But now I guess I'm gonna replace this fuel pump since it's right here. Okay, that's held in by 8mm bolts, so I'm gonna try to vacuum some of this dirt and stuff out, so when I remove this to replace it, I don't drop any dirt inside the tank. Okay, to reinstall it, it's pretty straightforward. New gasket, new pump. Just gonna have to maneuver it in, you know, twist it certain ways, but remember these lines face down right like this if you're facing the back of the tank. So let's go ahead and get the sucker put on. Okay, there's actually a spacer that came off the old pump you have to reuse because the new one doesn't come with it. It's labeled front top. The gasket has to be orientated that same direction The aftermarket one that I got took me forever to figure it out and get it orientated right, because the factory one is labeled front top as well. So once I got those kind of lined up, everything bolted in place. This fuel pump is a little bit longer than factory, but there's a nut on the back of it, and you can loosen it and actually push the fuel pump itself up on the assembly, and then re-tighten it, and then it'll fit. And I guess that's like an adjustment for the 15 and 20 gallon tanks. I don't know if there's actually a difference with the tank themselves, but there is a plastic piece down there, and I don't know if that raises the pump up, makes a difference with the 15 and 20 gallon variances in these fuel tanks or not. But anyway, I had to adjust mine to make it fit properly. So there we go, fuel pump is in. One thing I did do to this plasma cutter, you know, I bought the 220 adapter for it, but the standoff that was on it, I just took it off, and this thing cuts really good now with the standoff off. Standoff off. But anyway, yeah, I was able to cut this section out a lot easier. You know, I don't really have the steadiest of hand because this stuff was dripping on me, but had to cut around, you know, the shackle bushing. I have some primer sprayed up inside of it now. I'm gonna put rust reformer inside of it, but just gonna get the other side slid in. As you see, I got that one welded up in place, and I'm gonna clean that up and put rust reformer on the new safety cap. But yeah, this side's done. That's like for trailer brakes. It's a wire and harness. Just trying to keep it out of the way, but yeah, unbolted the exhaust hanger. So everything just slides up in place. It's no big deal, but we're getting closer to getting this thing back together now. Okay, so here's this side welded up. It done the same thing. I could use a stick welder up here because it was flush, and then it was flared out, left a gap. So I gotta take a MIG and fill in the gap and just layer over top of layer with this little Harbor Freight special titanium. But yeah, it's ugly. I'm gonna take a grinder to it, grind off as much as I can. Both sides are done, so grind it and paint it, put her back together. Okay, both sides are completely welded up. They don't look the best, so don't judge my welds. But everything's primered. I have rust reformer on it. Then I want to put another coat of rust enamel over top of that. But the frame is no longer rusted out. I traded the rust for some really ugly looking welds, but at least this is sturdy. Gets the job done anyway. I mean, this isn't going to be a show Jeep. Next up is replacing the windshield frame, passenger fender. You can see this is like a Evan Fisher fender that's just absolute trash. I'm gonna see if I can't find like a wrecked YJ and just source a OEM frame, windshield frame and fender, because the metal quality is so much better. I mean, you get what you pay for. This is pretty cheap, and I bought this about 6 or 7 years ago, if I had to guess. So I think I paid like $200 for it, and it was already primed, but I went over it with some more primer, then, you know, of course repainted it the Lexus color. But once I get this replaced, windshield frame, I don't know if I can save the windshield or not because it's brand new, but if it shatters during removal, oh well, I'll buy another one. But I'm trying to slowly piece this thing back together. I'm just happy I have a rear frame that's somewhat sturdy now. Let all that stuff dry. Like I said, go back over it with rust enamel. Then I want to start putting together the fuel tank. Okay, so I'm still waiting on the shackle bushings to come in. They'll be here in a couple of days. I guess they're on back order or something. Anyway, I'm getting the fuel tank situated right now. I'm just going to go ahead and put it in, test out the fuel pump, make sure it works. Remember at the very beginning of this video I said that when I was taking the tank out, I was dreading having to put it back in because it might be a pain in the butt. Well, it's proven to be true. So right now I'm trying to get everything lined up. I went ahead and just took that little rubber cushion out of the skid plate in between the tank and the skid plate, because I just feel like that rubber just traps moisture, and my skid plate's rusted out anyway. So that'll be something else I will more than likely be replacing down the road. But right now I'm just trying to get this thing kind of lined up in there. I've got the straps in place, so now we have to get like the skid plate kind of mounted to the frame support back here in front of the rear bumper, and then start all those nuts back in. I can't remember what they were. I think 13 millimeters. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to get this thing lined up and put back in. Okay, I went ahead. I used fuel injection clamps for the fuel lines down here. So I'm just checking for leaks right now. Like I said, I wanted to make sure this pump worked before I put it back in. So right now the Jeep's running, and looks like the fuel gauge is working too. So at least we got that going. Anyway, I went ahead and got all the vent hoses, everything hooked up in place. I got my new vent and filler hoses hooked up. Obviously not on the tank, but I feel like getting them up started from the flap would be easier, because you have more leverage trying to get them on as we start jacking this thing up. Slide them over and, you know, just torque them down. But then start putting in all the nuts, get the tank lined up, of course, when I'm jacking it up, get it bolted in. So then all that would be left is just waiting for the shackle bushings, hook them up, and start driving it again. Okay, shackle bushings have arrived, so go ahead and get this started and jack up the rear end, get the shackles in place, and then we can go ahead and start bolting this thing together. These things are stupid easy to put in. You just push the bushings in, one on each side, then you have a metal sleeve that goes through. It takes 10 seconds. Now to get the shackles put back on, gotta raise the rear end up and then bolt them in, put the wheels back on, fill it up with gas, and test driver. Shackle bushings are in, shackles are mounted up, have that wheel on. Everything's good to go. I'm just gonna have to go back over everything with a more rust reformer, because we've kind of scratched it right here, but that's no big deal. But yeah, almost done with it. Oh, she's back on the ground. Shackles are in. I can't really get in there and show you guys, but there's the new bushings. Energy suspension, I think, was the brand that I bought. Get them off Amazon pretty cheap, I think 18 bucks. So not bad. Now to drive it, put gas in it, and hopefully this fix will last. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more as I slowly try to rejuvenate the old Rattletrap YJ.